Is this change? Because there's certain ways I can set this thing. Let's see.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to episode 10. I am your host, Marcus, alongside with Sean. And in this episode, we are talking about when to quit.
Yeah.
And I know this is an important one. But Sean, before we get started, how are you doing today, my man?
I'm actually doing very good. We just had an interesting conversation that we might let y'all in on a little later. Not today though. But I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Real busy. Kids back to school and all that good stuff. How about you?
Yeah, same, man. Like my kids started soccer, so it's been a crazy schedule and getting a lot of different things coming up. I'm coming across that I wanted to get involved with. So it's kind of like, and knowing like my plate is full, right? Like you and I have talked about that all the time about how our plates are full. And it's like, I guess this is where I came up with a topic like, well, when do you decide to quit something? And I thought it would be a good conversation because a lot of people, I don't want to give people a mixed message about just quitting on stuff and not giving something enough time. So I know off camera, we started trying to define when is a proper time to quit. What do you think about that?
Well, definitely. Either we're talking about quitting or pivoting, and I guess we'll get into that. But um, I guess the easiest way, if we're just talking about, I think we both talked about this. Neither one of our mindsets really work on quitting, so it's kind of like a tough topic, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing too, like defining it. When you talk about an entrepreneur, I think that's where I'm like coming from it, from that perspective. And you hear about entrepreneurs about how you have to pivot, right?
Yeah.
How much time do you give something before you need to understand, well, it's not working. I need to pivot to something else. I need to try something else. And so I guess that's where I'm coming from when I'm looking at pivoting, right? As opposed to quitting, because the way I look at it is more so like you have to, if you have a passion for something and you just quit, that's different, right? Now you can shift perspective or try different alternate ways, which I think is something you should do if it's something you're passionate about. But I think passion dies out to a point, right? Like you learn about different stuff and experience stuff, and then you find, or you have other different things, life events, whatever the case is, and then you kind of, your perspective shifts, and so your priority shifts. I think from that point, you need to see what your priorities are. So it's really not a quitting, it's more of a shifting, making other things a different priority.
Yeah, so I guess it would be like more so of pivoting, because at times, like, the goal, you put everything down and you have your goals. And usually, if these are passions, your goals don't change, but sometimes the plan changes. So you kind of pivoted away from that plan. Now, if we're just talking about quitting something, let's be clear, it is a time to quit, right? If you're doing something just because everybody else thought you should do it and it's not what you want to do, and you see nowhere of any, you don't see yourself happy, you don't see yourself having a future with it, yeah, you should probably quit. You know what I mean? Period. Like, life is too short, and we don't know how many days we have to be sitting there playing around with something that we don't even want to do.
Yeah.
Now we're not trying to get people out of. If you're passionate about something, man, let's be clear, and you have a goal, you may feel like quitting sometimes. It happens. Those things get tough. You, like I was saying off camera, we always say like trust the process, but then sometimes that process of trusting that process gets hard when you feel like you're not getting any progress. And that goes into another topic where we really need to track what we're doing and to see where we at. But I know you was about to say something. You go ahead, drop it, man.
No, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, how would you define that? How do you know, like, when you've essentially hit, right? Like, if you haven't been tracking your progress, which I know a lot of people don't typically. I know for myself, like, I don't typically for specific things unless it's a big priority for me, just to make sure that I stay online with everything. But how do you, like, I guess how much would you allocate time to something like that? Would you define it like that, or how do you think you would define that?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I don't know if it happens to you, it's more of a self improvement thing. It's goal setting, right?
Hmm.
And putting a plan down. Sometimes we just get frustrated because we didn't properly put it down. So we're kind of like blowing in the wind and we don't know where we are. So we're just frustrated. And when that happens, I feel like we have to take a step back and get back on track. It may sound like a lot of work, but this is my opinion, the only way to really reset and restart. Because sometimes we're going to have to reset and restart. Like we learn, we like, dang, I was doing this and I don't want to quit, but I don't really know where the hell I'm at. I need to stop. I need to write these things down and refocus and get myself together. And that's the part. Sometimes we feel like, you know, we can feel like that's a waste, but it's not. It's a learning experience. I mean, and if we don't pass it, we're gonna keep doing it with everything.
Yeah, that's even for like me. I guess the biggest thing for me is like, I've always struggled like what I wanted to do with Discover Ignite. Yes, I've wanted to help people. I've actually started really enjoying like doing TikToks and stuff like that. It's
Hmm.
because it's helping me grow, right? Like I've noticed a bigger pop in my Instagram account, a bigger pop in TikTok. My TikTok is even bigger than my Instagram account now. So it's just, and I find that more enjoyable, right? Like I like doing that better than some of the other stuff that I do. And so I think that was the biggest like pivot or change. Like, well, I'll do the stuff like I enjoy doing, right? Like there's a reason why I became an entrepreneur to do stuff that I enjoy and to eliminate those things that I don't really enjoy because that we've talked about how the passion doesn't come through if you're not doing it, right?
Hmm.
And so I started looking at Discover Ignite and I was like, well, maybe I should just make it more of a podcast kind of thing because I do enjoy the podcast more. And how else could I do it, right? Could I just do it with just doing interviews? I do enjoy doing the interviews a lot. And I started like dissecting like what I was doing, like you're talking about, like what are the parts of it that I like doing and just doing more of that
Yeah.
for the most part. So
Um. Definitely, man. I think and we have to remember this. We have to remember, like, it takes one, right? We
yeah,
always say like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, they really missed more shots than they ever, made. And with us as entrepreneurs, we're doing it, and then it takes one, and it's so funny. One pops off, and then everything you did bounces off. You know what I mean? Now you're
yeah,
great. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Now you're great. So it's like, even with like what you're doing, I feel like you're doing fantastic. It's just getting that thing, and one of the things is just that a wise man changes often. So like even rethinking it is cool. You know what I mean? But just I always say when we pivot, just make sure we don't pivot away from our ultimate goal. The way we go about doing it, because there's always more effective ways. We talked about that before, stuck on the idea. And then sometimes the way we go at things, we only can go at things with the amount of information and knowledge we have at the time. 5 years from now, you've been and learned, I've been and learned more, grown more, and then we're able to do things in a different way. So like you're on the right path. Like it sounds like you're definitely on the right path because it's that little. It's this. I think we're
That
only
struggle, yeah.
yeah, and that's what the growth is. That it's just like lifting weights, right? Like we don't get stronger until we put something, until we stress the body in a sense. And sometimes I think that's in life too. I think we strive. We try to build. We're long rangers. Like we try to do everything ourselves, but it does help. Like in the gym to have a spotter. I found that in the gym, I get stronger with a spotter because I'm able to push a little bit harder. And even sometimes they're not even like, a good spotter is not really even touching the bar. Their hands are just there. If we're talking about a bench press, and they're just saying push. People we
Mhm.
need, man. Like I say, there's definitely gonna be times when we're by ourselves, but let's take advantage of the people that are around us that will help us. Like if we ain't got to be all like that, let's not do it. You know what I mean? Because there's gonna be other things we're gonna have to do by ourselves anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But I think like for me, I think it like depends, right? Like
Mm.
when you talk about like being driven and stuff, like the entrepreneurial stuff, like I'm not giving up on that. Like
Yeah.
that's not something. And this is, I guess, where it comes down to, right? It's like I am not my company, right? Like I'm not Discover Ignite. I'm not like trading and all these other different things, right? There are tools that allow me to do what my ultimate purpose is, right? Is to
Mm.
be an entrepreneur and to find the freedom. And so I look for different avenues and aspects. And so I've been, for me, it's just retooling and reshifting stuff.
Mm.
So it's not like giving up that. And I totally understand what you're saying about like dropping it. That's not something I've wanted to do. Like I've enjoyed people, but I had a conversation actually about a week ago or so, and and in that conversation, like we were talking about how just talking about like personal development,
Mm.
and I was like, and she was telling me, it's a lot of it is the same,
Mm.
and it's like it's true. A lot of it is the same, and it's more so uh, talking, getting someone else's perspective helps, right? Because even though like you and I, we know a lot of different stuff about mindset and a lot of different things about health or whatever the case is, right? But it's getting that perspective and coming in, right? You take me like 5-6 years ago, right? Like I wasn't into personal development. Yeah, I did like bodybuilding and all that stuff. That's a different kind, right? Instead of like developing my mind, right? It was different at that point. And then when I wanted to develop my mind, all this stuff was new and fresh to me, and it worked and it helped. And so like it's getting more people into self-development. And I understand where some people don't like self-development because of the fact that, hey, you mean I gotta push through this, and all this stuff is this miserable stuff I hate. And
Yeah.
then try to get that perspective that, doing the hard things, they do help a lot, right? Like you want to grow, you want to see change in your life, you do the hard stuff. It's not about doing the easy stuff and trying to find shortcuts. And we've lived a life, we've grown up that way. We both, we're both the same age, right? So we've grown up in that era where it's like, um, you have to do stuff the specific way, right, to be able to attain the things that you want. And so it's just shifting that perspective and trying to again focus on what it is that I enjoy about it. And then I guess that's what the whole quitting part, like what exactly, I guess you almost have to define what are you quitting, right? Like, are you quitting like your overall reason to why you do it? Like my overall reason to be doing this is to be free, right? To not have to work for the man, AKA, or whatever the case is. And so I have different tool sets, right? I have Discover Ignite, I have trading, I have some other different aspects that I've been thinking about working on. And so it's just shifting that around and determining what do I really want. And I even started thinking about, do I really want to start giving motivational speeches? It's like I like doing the TikToks; those are fun, those are motivational, right?
Mm.
And they're quick, and I can come up with them fast. But going and giving a speech and talking about it, right? It's hard because we've talked about changing people. It's hard to change ourselves, and to change another person is extremely hard. So I'm starting to look, okay, well, then I put my entrepreneurial cap on. What is something else? Where's a niche that is exploding? And so I started, I've been doing a lot of stuff with Angela and stuff
Mm.
over her with her lives and stuff. We've been talking a lot about like a lot of crypto stuff. She's never been into investing. So much like you, I've talked about like stock market stuff. I started talking about her a lot about like crypto stuff because I've been getting in crypto, doing a lot of crypto stuff. And so we've been talking about crypto stuff and NFTs and all that stuff. And then I'm starting to think about, well, okay, how can you get NFTs to help the entrepreneurial mindset, right? Like, how can I get NFTs and help perhaps teach people about NFTs in their business and how that can help their business?
Oh, wow.
And so, like, I'll try to like loop back around with everything that I'm already doing with all the new information I get, right? It's like reassessing what I have and the knowledge I have, and okay, what do I like now? It's like it's like something everybody has to do, right? I think it's important to almost go, like, if you're not going every quarter, like reassessing what you're doing and like, okay, well, what am I doing that is not making me happy, right? I'm doing this for a purpose, and I need to remind myself that I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing this to make myself happy. To yes, I still got to be able to sustain myself, but I also need to look at, okay, well, what's not working, what isn't, and then shift stuff around. And if I'm not doing that right, I'm not going to make progress. And so that my biggest thing, and this is why I brought up the whole when should you quit? And it's not really quitting, right? Because
Yeah.
priorities shift, and it's really just reassessing what you have and making the changes, right? So
Yeah,
I
I
kind of
think
went on a long rant there.
no, you're good, bro. So like that's good. Like how I always see it, because I've learned. All right, I'll use an example. Like when I hurt my back, right? Um, the ultimate goal, we know this. I mean, just as a parent, you want to be able to take care of your kids and your family. But when I hurt myself and I wasn't walking like that, and I gained all the weight, it was time. Like I wasn't quitting on life. I wasn't quitting. I was going to walk away from telecom. That was happening. Uh, but I was pivoting because the
Hmm.
ultimate goal is still to take care of my family. And I think we have to do the things that make us happy, not what people think we should do, and wondering what people think. Because at this point, I don't give a damn. Like I just don't. I really don't, man. Like uh, people sometimes some people are just negative. Some people they mean well, but they can only talk to you from their experiences. So uh, even if they mean well, they don't fully get it. So you got to make decisions, and you know, you almost like fall early and often. Not nobody wants to fail, nobody wants to fall. I don't, right? But it happens, and even being stuck in changing, pivoting. So like I learned then getting back to it. I learned that I had to pivot. Nothing changed about who I wanted to be and what I was going to do. It's funny. I always say this with that. Even with training, that actually helped me. That's what got me to training full time. That's funny. Like I was doing it part time. I was doing it half ass, and we've been at work together. And you see me just always working out. Like I like to work out. Like it helps relieve
Yeah.
stress and stuff. But at that point, I had to pivot. Even now, I think of a lot of things where entrepreneur wise, I'm pivoting, like thinking of buying like a duplex or something like that. Like it's a lot of things that's going on, and I think we just do the things that make us happy, and don't worry about anything else. Like the ultimate goal, you want to help people. You're going to do it. Discovery night, just using this example, it's the way you started and the way you finish it and the way you go back to it, who knows? You know what I mean? Like, but
Yeah.
even that, I feel like helping people be financially free is a hell of a help because most of the time, the reason why people can't do certain things is because we're in the rat race of surviving. You know, like
Yeah.
just trying to survive in itself, you just only thing you can do is really see the walls. You can't see beyond the walls.
Mm.
And you just bouncing around from this wall to that wall to that wall, back to the wall, the bed, and back and do it again. I'm learning that wealthy people do things totally different. You know, they totally
Yeah,
different.
totally. Yeah, I heard that. It was actually funny you say that because I heard, actually overheard someone talking. Because one of the people, you know how on TikTok it syncs you with like other like people in self development, and one particular person that keeps coming up, he talks to millionaires and billionaires all the time. He essentially just talks to them on the street. What kind of piece of advice would you give somebody? They've always one particular man he talked to, he said, right, like there's a difference between the way poor, middle class, and rich people think, right? Like I don't remember exactly how it was, but it was more like essentially I can't remember how I recall the poor, but I know like for the middle class, like he said, like the middle class thinks that they have to, I think, like buy stuff, right? And then the wealthy is more the fact that you have to um, you buy assets, right? And those assets essentially pay for other things. And it goes to a lot of things like I think you've read the Robert Kiyosaki book, right? Like everybody that's done
Yeah,
finance,
Yeah.
that book, and talks about assets and everything, and how you should go about it. And it's funny. I've even thought about this too. Sorry, I didn't mean to drag this whole thing to a different side and stuff, but I know, like for me, like I've had the same car for like 10 years, man. Like my car is old, and like I just don't care. Like, and I could tell like people like judge me for it.
Mhm.
It's like, I just don't care. Like, you don't
Yeah.
know the condo I live in, and it's probably, not
Yeah.
to, I'm not trying to like rub or anything like that, but
Nah.
ultimately what I'm saying is like, I don't like to flash money. Even that condo I live in, it's not because I do it for my kids to have a place for them, something nice for them, because of it's an investment in a sense, right?
Right.
And so with that being said, like I'm trying to like reassess, finances, and I've thought about doing something like that for Discover Ignite, and I was like, well, I've kind of gone all over, but it's like a lot of people are very iffy about like financial stuff because we were never taught.
Right.
It's always a bad thing, right? Like it's the devil whenever you bring up finances, and people just don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, it scares us a lot of times because, like you say, we weren't taught. It's new, it's foreign. One of the biggest things that I'm learning is that we middle class and poor, we trade time for money too often.
Yes,
You
I
know,
agree with that.
we do it all the time, like, and that could sound crazy to somebody, but we'll we'll work 16, 18 hours. I used to do it all the time, only to put my money in the bank and save it until I spend it. Like my money wasn't making money. So
Yeah.
if my money's not making money, I'm only gonna be set up to have to do those things again. I was taught the basics of it, uh, to save, but to save, that's half of it. If your money is not making money, it's just sitting there waiting to spend. That's it.
Yeah, definitely should. That was one of the other things too, is that you definitely should never have. That's what it was. Is essentially, I think the poor save, middle or the middle class save, or whatever what you had just said. Essentially, the saving, even as someone that for the wealthy, really, it's not just about buying assets, but you don't allow money to just sit, right? Because I think a lot of people, and this is the biggest thing, is a lot of people don't understand about. And why I've always enjoyed like stock market stuff is because like people don't understand that your money loses money, right? It's the inflation stuff, and this is why I've been doing a lot of different talks and stuff. I've been going on live with Angela, and I went on live with Tony the other day too. And I started talking about crypto because inflation, right? Like it doesn't affect crypto, and people don't understand that. And the fact that the old way is how we grew up, and our parents told us you need to be saving, right? Like saving, it does not work. Like if you're going to be saving, it needs to be in crypto because it's deflationary, right? Like it gains value, it doesn't lose value over time. And that is a big reason why, I push some of that stuff, and I like doing that stuff because people don't understand, like, we are in an age essentially where things are dramatically changing, and especially with crypto, right? Like it's changing so much that all the old ways of thinking, right, are essentially dead. But you got people in positions that aren't going to just let it die, right? They're not going to just let crypto go. But crypto is such a big thing, and it's going to create the next, multi-millionaires, right? Because of the technology and what it does, and your money, and realizing that it doesn't lose value over time, that you're actually gaining value through multiple different ways. And it's just a really interesting avenue, and trying to unprogram people from that thought process that you're talking about just working in cycles and working with time for money. And that is definitely one of the hardest things. And you repeat that cycle because the system wants you to think that way, right? Like there's a reason why you're not taught about. This is why I do a lot of different TikToks, is I try to put these like hidden messages in there like this, because of that fact, to try to get people to think more because for me, it took me to go plant-based to realize that, what people are saying, or what the masses may be saying, is incorrect. Like, you need to think for yourself. And that led me down the whole rabbit hole between challenging beliefs and stuff like that, and going and experimenting with it, and really see what the results were, and realizing that the results were way better, right, or complete opposite of what people were saying. And so I've done that. Like, I've shifted, right? Like, I reshifted everything, and again stopped just taking headline news or other different aspects of my life, or perhaps beliefs that I had before, because of what my family was telling me and everything, and just went on my own and did it. And I know that isn't an easy thing to say, but or easy for people to do, is to challenge beliefs and to understand why things are the way they are, and go deeper, right, than just, oh, well, it works that way, instead of looking deeply about it and trying to make change in it.
But I'm listening to the questions on here actually. Well, I'm trying to see. So one of the things we're talking about on the podcast, guys, is when the topic is when to quit, but we're not necessarily saying quit. We're talking more so of pivoting.
Oh, you know what? Actually, if that's something you want to do, man, I have a link. We can send it out, and you can get people to come on, and actually we can watch the chat. I don't know if you can see the chat yourself. I know I can.
That would
And
be
then
awesome.
I can have people ask questions and come and talk and stuff like that too.
See, on this podcast, y'all see, we're pivoting on the podcast. The next one,
Making changes. Our whole the whole thought and idea about stopping the original thing we had, I think, is kind of drifted way far away from there. But
yeah, it
what we
definitely
do,
did.
man.
That's what we do, and you got to be able to. I think one of the biggest things in life to be successful is being able to pivot. You got to be
Yeah.
able to. People who don't adapt usually stay stuck and they don't grow. That's just what happens. You know what I mean? Also, not trying to get off topic, but I'm noticing it. I'm noticing that a lot. Like, you'll talk to some people, and every time they talk, it's always somebody else, or people just don't get it. Sometimes, most of the time, when it's like that, it's not that people just don't get it. It's that they're unable to adapt to change, and they think everybody's going to conform to them, and that's just not life. That's not how it works. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's not how this thing works. We have to be able to take deep looks, a look at it ourselves, and if you're into problem solving and making things work, you'll do that. If not, you'll stay stuck, and in my opinion, you'll just always be frustrated. You'll be mad at people. You'll be really mad at people. You'll think everybody's stupid, and you'll think everybody's ignorant and tripping, but it's really not them. It's more so a you thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I've always tried to challenge myself even throughout the years, but it wasn't until the most recent years that when I started really going out and reading, and I just did a video on this about reading books and stuff, and obtaining knowledge, but not just obtaining the knowledge, but like trying to execute on the knowledge, and realizing that that's where the change comes and stuff. We're talking about stopping, right? Like when to stop, right? And we both done it, right? Like we just talked about that, but you just talked about how you hurt your back and you had to stop doing telecommunications. I've done it a couple of times. I stopped doing telecommunications because I didn't want to break my back, right? Essentially. And so I got out of that and went in programming. I did that for a couple of years, and it's like, man, I don't want to be chained to a desk. I don't want to be doing this. And I remember sitting there every day and like, man, this is not what I want to be doing, right? Like I accelerated my point in programming to a manager very quickly. And being said, like when you become a manager in like programming, all you do is read and attend meetings. And I was like, I don't want to be doing this. And writing essentially documents all day long. And I'm like, yeah, this defeats the purpose of programming. Like I like the programming aspect, but now all I'm doing is writing documents and attending and going into meetings and, having the high level of like intellectual thought process. And it's like, I don't want to be doing this. Like, this is not what I want to be doing. And I felt out of place at that point, right? Like I've always kind of felt like an imposter when I first came over into programming, because I was, essentially going to work and having that telecommunication job, which is very labor intense, right? And then going over to programming, and it was just, I felt like so off, and it took me a couple of years to like feel like I was in the right place. And then when I got comfortable with that, it's like this isn't where I want to be either. And then I remember just like being at work, and like we go in meetings and we're talking about certain processes and everything. Like people are getting so angry about stuff, and I'm like, because they wanted to, essentially they were talking about like a time frame on everything, and it's like, okay, well, I understand the technology is something you can't put dates on, right? Like software just doesn't work that way. Like there could be so many bugs, stuff doesn't always just snap together, right? Like there are so many issues with software that it's not that simple. And so being said, like, and then people were just fighting over like time frames and everything. And I'm like, man, this is not where I want to be. Because I remember like I take that hiatus for a while, and I was trying to do Discover Ignite when I first started, and I went back, and I was like, man, this is like, people are just, why go to work and just be like frustrated and mad about like people trying to make decisions. And I just didn't get it. And then the bad thing is I started falling into that thing too, right? And I was like doing so much meditation and everything. I was like, man, this is like throwing me way off. Like I can see why, people get caught in that loop, and it's hard. And then you realize this isn't what I want to do. And I followed my intuition, and I was like, well, obviously I had a plan, and I was doing other things. I was doing Discover Ignite. I was doing trading on the side and everything, and seeing results enough to prove to myself that, hey, you know what, I could do this, and I don't need this anymore. And so it is seeking.
That's I have a question for you. That's the biggest, because I'm statement for that's one of the biggest things when I'm talking about trapped inside those walls. Most of the time, people won't even take that step because they feel like they have nowhere to go, so they get trapped. And at times, those are the people who are giving other people who have big dreams advice. So we're just being led to, everybody just following, being unhappy, the rat race of survival, and really not doing what you want to do and follow your dreams. So like, what if the question is like, what would be some of your advice? What would you tell somebody who's not happy where they are and they know it's time to go? What would you tell them?
Well, I think the biggest thing to understand is, right, it's the not knowing. For me, like I was there, right? Like I didn't know. And I think this is where a lot of people get confused, is they think, traditionally you would go back to college, and people are like, well, how am I going to pay for that? I can't pay for that. And nowadays you don't have to do that, right? Like there's a lot, right? You have books, you have YouTube, you have a bunch of different things. You can go on YouTube and they have audiobooks on YouTube, right? Like there's education is free and out there. You want to learn to do anything, you can do anything out there. I use YouTube for everything, man. I mean, if I need to fix something around the house, right, I'll YouTube it, right? And I think everybody understands that concept, but you don't understand that you can take it much further than that. Learn about finances, learn about your health, right? Like realize that, what you put in your body affects your mind, right? And the way you feel is because of what you're eating, right? That the food that's put in your body is essentially creating the cells in your body. Like you need to understand all that. I mean, it's probably too scientific, but just realize it's there and how it affects you. And we talk about how.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm like ranting. I wish you would have thought I had coffee today, but I haven't.
A lot of times it's me that's talking all the time, right? So like you're doing it today, and you're doing good though. I wanted to say what Rose said. She said, I feel like everyone has something that they're good at, and it takes them to step out of their comfort zone and take a leap of faith. And some people just need other people to believe in them and support. I agree.
I agree. I 100% agree with that. I think a lot of times, I think you have to have a belief in yourself. I think that is important, because if you don't have the belief, right, if that
nobody else is
if whatever that person is, right, that person could leave tomorrow, and you wouldn't have that, and then you wouldn't have that support system, and then it falls back on you.
Yeah.
And so it is important to have a belief in yourself, to have confidence in yourself, and to build confidence. It takes you pushing yourself to do hard and tough things, and doing those
Yeah.
things when nobody is watching is
The
what's really
biggest
tough.
thing is getting out of that comfort zone, right? Knowing that everything is not going to always feel good and be easy. Usually, a lot of times we focus on the things that we're good at because it feels good because we're good at it, and then we stay away from the things that's hard. But the things that are hard for us are the things that pushes us to the next level, and that's a big thing. I mean, I'm gonna be the first one to tell. I practice activities to be uncomfortable because I don't want life to do it for me, right?
Yeah,
And I want to be able to handle the stresses of certain things. But being uncomfortable, it's in the word. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good. Like it doesn't feel good, man. Um, so I guess that's the thing. I guess that's the question too. What we would have to ask: Are we quote unquote quitting or pivoting? Are we quitting because we're uncomfortable? You know, because if that's the case, if we do things like that, it's always gonna we're gonna be putting a lot. We're gonna keep stopping because you're not gonna find one thing that's 1 through 10 where it's gonna be all good. You know what I mean? It's not gonna be like that.
yeah, I agree with that. I think when you talk about quitting, right? Like it's just you definitely have to align those things that you want, right? Like I think that's one of the biggest things, and knowing what you want. And like for me, like we were just talking about, like for me in Discovery Night, like I don't really like I kind of knew where I wanted to go, but I've since like I've come across different information all the time, and so I've pivoted a lot. So it's kind of like trying to find a direction. I know where I want to go on specific things when it comes to entrepreneurship and stuff like that. But when you're talking about the business, right, and where you're trying to lead the business is what matters. And I think even for like something like that, it's more building a community of people that are like-minded,
Mm.
and finding your cheerleaders, right, to help you make that pivot, to
Yeah.
help you quit those things that you don't want. And again, but you have to know. This is my biggest thing. Like you have to know like what you're missing out on, and to be
Yeah.
able to know what you're missing out on, you have to experience stuff, or else
Yeah.
you don't know uh, what's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. We definitely have to know, and you have to know what you're reaching for, right?
Yeah,
If we don't really have a goal or goals in mind, you're really just blowing in the wind. You're gonna change all the time. Like the ultimate goal, whatever. If you pivoting, it's still getting taking you to that goal. That's a great thing. I mean, because it's just you're 9 times out of 10 you're finding a more effective way. And if you're not, you're 10 times out of 10 you're at least trying to find a more effective way, which is better than not doing anything. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, I mean, and stuff is so accessible, man. I mean, like I talked about the biggest thing is just the mental hurdle, right? Like that's what it is. I mean, oh, I've talked about having a podcast. I don't know for how many years, like probably since even before I started Discover Ignites, I wanted to do a podcast, and it took me 3 years to do it. And then knowing the process, like it is like so easy to like do it. It's just doing it, and then and I know it's hard. Like we've had people ask us before, like, well, how do you get started? And we said you have to just get started, right? Like, okay, Google, or go back to Google it or YouTube it. Well, how do I start a podcast? And that's how I got started doing it. And then again, we just put it out there. And then I
Mm-hmm.
learned later on, like once we started doing it, I learned later on, well, I can edit it better. How do I make the sound quality better? And doing it that way. And then the service that I use to distribute my podcast, right? Like what kind of services do I need to use? And right, like I found Anchor. Anchor essentially does all the work for me. Like there's so many tools out there that do a lot of the heavy lifting. Like a lot of times you're like, well, I don't want to have to go talk to this person because then I have to go talk to this person. It's just a nightmare. And my job is just so much easier. I can go there and I can forget about it. But there's so many tools now for like entrepreneurs that will help you leverage your time. Right? Because when you start getting that entrepreneurial mindset, that's essentially your whole mindset is resources and leveraging what I have. And so you start looking at things. Well, how can I leverage what I have? And because your time is a valuable thing, and as an entrepreneur, that is extremely. I mean, that should be for everybody. But I think entrepreneurs have that more in focus, and they know what it takes is that my time is really what matters, is key,
Yeah,
and I need to know where it's going and how it's being spent.
yeah, definitely. Because I mean, and just I think a lot of things is people have to believe in themselves more and know the value, like their value, and then also be able to share value in a sense. Um, if you're valuable and you know you're valuable and you're sharing valuable information, the right people are going to come. And like you said, cheerleaders or people who root you on, a lot of times, sometimes they be completely strangers, but it's that loyalty circle. Once you've reached that one person, they come on and then they tell everybody about you. You don't do anything. Even I was just listening to something about they was talking about haters, and I'm not a big person who really but uh like he said, Wallow, he was saying it. Haters are your biggest fans. They talk
Yeah,
about you and they tell everybody about you, and they get other people to pay attention to you. And if you're really doing your thing, you just gain more followers and fans or more people you can help. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I think everything is like a mindset and perspective, like we always talk about. Knowing that it's going to work out for the good. It's just that we got to go through those stages. I always think about, like, it's so wild that the videos, when I used to edit videos, dude, it just take me all day.
yeah. I remember that. Dude. I don't know
I'm
how many
talking,
times I record myself and edit forever, man.
yeah, and now it doesn't take me nearly as long. I'm talking, it used to take me all day to the point I didn't want to talk to anybody because they were like messing up my concentration. Like in those same videos that would have took me like 8 hours, that probably may take me 20 minutes now. You know what I mean? If that sometimes. So it's just, but I had to go through those stages, and it was self-taught. So
Mhm.
I had to go through those things to get to a certain point, and that's the thing. It's a real rewarding feeling after you accomplish what had you stuck. You know what I mean? And I think that's what makes you better. When we talked about not trying to make it run on, we talked about the people who are good in theory. They know all these things to say, but the application shit sucks because really they
Yeah.
probably never done it before. Because usually once you've done it, you're able to like kind of simplify it to a person who wants to listen. Sometimes the issue is that people are can be too smart for their own good. They still in their head. You know what I mean? You can make it as simple as possible, and if they're not ready, or just like there's many times, if they won't get it because they thinking that it has to be harder. No, you literally like I can tell you calls and puts.
Mhm.
When I found out how that really worked, I just was like, this can't be real. Like I was like, it's no way this could be real. There's no way that I can get this without really having this, and then sell this. All the thing I had to do was insure it. That's what it basically. That's what I got from it now. Long as, I mean, yeah, be ready to have to take it. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
because you basically the insurance, and I get it. But it's like, dang, man, you know how many times you can make uh money off of something that you never even put anything down for? That's just crazy to me. That's crazy to me. Still to this day, it's crazy. Still to this day, I was looking at I guess we could say I was looking at Apple. You see what it reached up to like
Yeah.
2 weeks ago?
Yeah, you there? Sorry, I
Yeah,
like
I'm
went
here.
out for a second.
Oh, yeah, I was looking at Apple. Did you see where it reached 2 weeks ago? I know we getting off topic, but it like blew my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a 183, and it was like 118 like a few months ago. It went back down now, but dude, you could have got it all.
Well, that's it, man. And that's the biggest thing too is we talked about leverage. Like you,
Mm.
and something that wealthy people use is leverage. Like you have to know how to use. Like a lot of people, poor and middle class, they use debt not in a good way, right? Like you have to learn how to use debt in a positive way. and how to do things. And I think a lot of times this even goes back. I just heard about the whole. I mean, I've known about it, but the whole Trump and his taxes and stuff. Whatever your viewpoint is, political party. I'm more talking about like the taxes and how he rolls over um, his money into other houses and stuff and defers the paying taxes. And people are mad about that. But it's like, if you knew about that strategy, would you not do it yourself? Like you
Yeah,
buy
I'm definitely not
assets,
mad. I'm definitely not mad. He did good.
like your assets, gain equity over time, right? And they become more valuable. So you sell it, and as opposed to paying taxes on that, you put it into another asset that is going to grow. So that money just keeps growing and growing and growing, and deferring that tax payment, because eventually, one time, right, when you get in your 80s, like you're not going to be able to put out as much effort. So at that point, right, you fall into a different tax bracket, and then you take your money out, and then you pay a lower tax because you don't have all these other streams of income, right? But you wouldn't know that. I never knew that. You'd asked me that 7 years ago, I would have been like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
But I went and I taught myself, and I learned about all those different things and how to take advantage of it, right? And that's why you aren't taught, and it's up to you. And that's the biggest thing. And this is something else. And this is something else that, like, I've talked about, or I've been like thinking about is, I mean, that threw me off. I lost my concentration. But is when you're looking at leveraging and stuff like that, is just is going out and doing those things that are tough. That's what I was talking about. Is those things that are tough, and people. It kind of goes back to like even the conversation we had off camera and everything, that people like to be told what to do. People don't like to think for themselves. That's just a fact, and people don't want to have to challenge things and deal with repercussions. Right? They just rather be told, so they don't uh, essentially get in trouble. And so, being said, going from that point forward, like it is up to you. You have to take responsibility. And I know a lot of people don't want to do that, but if you really want to see true change, like you have to own it. Every part of it, good, bad, the ugly, whatever the case is, but you want it, you have to own it.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. That's one of the things we have to be willing to take the risk and the hit. I mean, that's why we do, like you say, leverage. Even we do have to make. We want to make smart decisions. We don't just want to just do stupid. We're not saying just
Well,
just get
that's
rid of
something
it.
else I heard too, right? When I was having these conversations talking about crypto, someone was like, "Oh, isn't that gambling?" And I'm like, you have to understand, what is gambling. Gambling, going into okay, just an example is a casino, right? You go into the thing, you're going to lose money if you put your money in a machine, right? You just know what's going to happen, right? The odds are not in your favor.
Yeah,
The stock market, crypto, that is completely different, right? Yes, there's more risk in crypto because it's not regulated,
right.
but if you teach yourself and you realize, there are certain coins you can buy that aren't going to steal your money, right? Everything that is thrown in the news is all these fractions of a penny crypto that people buy, and then they become a millionaire overnight. Those are all the only headline news that you're getting, right? People don't understand that by building wealth, you accumulate small fractions of things, of assets, and that allows you to build to where you want to go. And so you're not gambling anything, right? You're only gambling if you don't inform yourself of what's going on
Right.
and take proper risk. And you have to also realize that to be able to make the dramatic changes that you see, that you live through books and you live through TV and you live through video games, that different life that you want, right? That is done through taking risk. But it's not just gambling, it's a calculated risk by gaining and obtaining knowledge that you need in
Right.
that field.
Mhm. I definitely agree. It's one of the things is we have to, like you said, we have to educate ourselves though. That's the thing. Like we want sometimes it's so much easier if we just feel like somebody just gives it to us. But then we wouldn't appreciate it anyway. So we do have to educate ourselves on what's going on in the stock market and I don't know much about crypto at all, but it's a lot different from gambling because it's the odds. Even if you're gambling, people who go play certain games, they do the numbers, right? And that's why they're good at it. People who go in casinos and they're good at it though. The people who are really good, they're good at the odds and the numbers. They know what they're doing. The people who are good, not the people that just just go in slots and just hoping they win, right? But that's
Yeah.
the same thing with the stock market. Like if you educate yourself and knowing what's what are your long terms and what's the goal? It all goes on back to the same thing. You gotta have
Mhm.
a goal in mind. If not, it's easy to be frustrated. It's very a goal or I did a post actually about that, just talking about excuses. Excuses only lead to more excuses, which in return you won't reach your goal and then you just will become frustrated. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you look at everybody else like they're special or they got this break or that break, but it's really not. Some people do they come off in a better situation, right? But there are people who came out of worse situations and came off good because of what they did. So I just think it's all about actions, you know.
Yeah, most definitely. If people took more action than they did coming up with an excuse, right?
Yeah.
There'd be more results out there. Most
Yeah.
definitely.
Because unfortunately we can't have both, right? You either gonna
Yeah.
have excuses or results, but you're not gonna have both. You're just not. It's if you keep talking yourself out of going after what you want to go after, you're just not going to get it. The easiest way to not get something is to do nothing.
Yeah.
Look,
Yeah.
even
Most
people that
definitely.
say, even that said, "Well, man, you're taking a chance if you do this." Yeah, but I'm taking a chance that I may win. When you're doing nothing, you're not going to win. You're most definitely going to be the same. And if that's the thing, if you're cool with that, that's okay. You know what I mean? But don't
Yeah.
complain about it. Don't complain about it.
Yeah. Definitely. Always experience that you have to take some form of risk. It doesn't matter what it is. Leap, right? Like even when I made the change and I leaped over from telecom to programming, right? Like I was giving up a 12-year career, right? But I realized in my mind that's I'm hitting the ceiling. Like how much growth do I really have? Yes, I'll take a step back. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like you have to be okay with taking a step back. What's wrong with taking a step back? Like there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with it. Like in my mind, like take everything away from me, right? Like to me, that's like a challenge. Like, okay, well now I'm gonna go out and I know the biggest thing is if you can be resourceful and if you can believe in yourself, right, they can take it all away and you can create something bigger and better, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and that's my biggest thing is that I've always liked to start, right? Like to hit the restart button, right? It's like it's more of a challenge for me to do it. Is it going to suck? Yeah, it's going to suck, and I know it is, but I'm okay with that, and I'm just going to take the action, right, and know where my resources are. It's where knowledge is so important. Or like we worry so much about, and again, not reflecting on just college, right? There's other ways to obtain knowledge. We
Hmm.
have to realize that outside of school is where you're going to learn the biggest things, right? Through perhaps meeting someone, or going to events and meeting other people, or talking to somebody, or listening to a podcast, whatever the case is. And that's why we do these podcasts is to give
Yeah.
you insight onto why and how we've done it to make it to where we have and allowed us uh, to pivot right from that little box that we were sitting in that we didn't want to do anymore, right?
And it's a constant thing. That's what one of the biggest things I guess would be to tell people is like in no way, shape, or form are we saying we're there. It's not it. But we're just saying to reach the levels we know that you have to grow, and with growth comes change, and a lot of times with change comes being uncomfortable. Just a thing, man. It's just a thing, but it becomes a life, and you find better ways of dealing with it. You know, I always say because I'm a trainer. I guess it's just like lifting weights, man. It's heavy sometimes. You
Yeah.
know, I might bench 225. It say if it was 225 for the first time. yeah, it's hard. Like it's hard probably the first 2 or 3 weeks every time I hit it, and then maybe, and then I'm adding something else on, and before you know it, I'm at 275, and 225 is easy, just like life. I, just the smallest thing with if we could be talking about money management or make it more applicable, just me learning how to edit videos, which was taking 8 hours, and now it's 20 minutes. You know, so
Yeah. Well, that's it. It's just knowing that it takes time, and then once you get it, then you have it, and then it's a skill you can have and build off of.
yeah,
And
and you have to keep building. Let's tell people that you don't just leave it alone.
yeah, yeah, you don't just you come to a point to where you're like, okay, well, I mean, you can be satisfied. That's a whole other
Yeah,
conversation when you become satisfied. But definitely, if you find that you're complaining and stuff, like there's too many ways you can change stuff,
yeah,
and just being patient. Being patient is key to a lot of things, and being disciplined, right, is another big thing that's going to help you not hang out with those friends that are taking you in the wrong place or doing the same
yeah,
thing every night, and to breaking away and hitting the books, right? Whether that's going back to college or whether it's teaching yourself about the stock market and investing or writing a book or doing something different. You have to see a difference in your life. You have to do something different.
yeah, definitely. And
But
I definitely agree. Hopefully, I know we jumped around, you guys, and we're still looking for more input on some of the things you want to hear. And one of the biggest things, I guess, Marcus, when we're saying quitting, we're talking more of a pivot. We're not saying quit on the things that you're passionate about and your goals. We're not saying that. We're saying that maybe you have a plan to reach that goal, and the plan may not be working for whatever reason. Maybe you've grown, and then you have to pivot, and you change the plans, and because the whole ultimate goal is we're going to. It's a mindset thing. If you believe you're going to succeed, you will succeed because you will find a way to do it. You know,
yeah,
Marcus
100%.
dropped some dimes, but Marcus dropped some dimes, so hopefully everyone caught them out. I want to say I'm gonna start looking at this crypto again, man. But yeah, what were you about to say, Marcus?
No, I mean, yeah, most definitely. That's something we can look at. But for those people out there, it is coming to an hour. So, like I like to always do, I like to put Sean on the spotlight and leave him with some good motivational uh, words to leave people with.
All right,
Um,
just real quick. Stay focused. Keep pushing. Keep your goals in mind. Pivot if you have to. Believe in yourself. You can do it. We believe in you. Peace.
Most definitely. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everyone out there. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.